It started on a Tuesday, the kind of gray, rain-streaked morning that already felt like defeat. The cafe where I worked smelled of burnt espresso and wet pavement. My shoes squeaked on the tile, my hair was plastered to my cheeks, and my fingers were numb from handing out lattes to strangers who didn't even look me in the eye. Rent was due in 3 days. My phone bill had already bounced, and my stomach hadn't seen real food since Sunday. So when I saw the wallet lying under the corner table, black leather, sleek, soaked through with rain but bulging with cash, I froze. For a second, I thought it was a prank. Maybe a customer had dropped it by mistake. But when I picked it up, the weight of it told a different story. It wasn't just full, it was heavy. I looked around the cafe, just the usual faces, the college couple whispering over shared earbuds, the old man reading the newspaper, the delivery guy wiping rain off his helmet. No one looked like they were missing anything. I opened it. Crisp $100 bills, stacked cleanly. A few black business cards embossed in silver. A photo, an old one, of a woman with dark eyes and a scar across her cheek. And tucked behind that, a single gold coin, heavier than it looked. But it was the name on the ID that made my heart stop. Dante Marino. Even someone like me, a broke waitress in a city that ate people alive, knew that name. He wasn't just rich, he was untouchable. Rumor said he owned half the docks and most of the politicians. The kind of man you didn't speak about in public unless you wanted to disappear by morning. And I was holding his wallet. For a long minute, I just stared at it, heartbeat hammering in my throat. There had to be at least 10 grand inside, maybe more. Enough to pay my debts. Enough to breathe again. The voice in my head whispered, no one would know. But another part of me, the part that hadn't yet been crushed by this city, whispered back, you'd know. I sighed, sliding the wallet into my jacket. Guess we're doing the right thing for once, I muttered under my breath. By the end of my shift, the rain had turned to mist. The streets glistened under streetlights as I walked toward the address on the ID, a part of town I'd only ever seen from the bus. The Marino estate sat on the edge of the city like a fortress carved out of shadow. Iron gates, stone walls, security cameras that followed every move. When I pressed the intercom, my voice came out small. I think someone dropped this. I'm just returning it. Silence, then a low click. Name. I blinked. Adrien Russo. A pause. Then the gate creaked open, slow and deliberate, like a mouth swallowing me whole. The mansion was more like a cathedral, vast, echoing, and drenched in gold light. The marble floor reflected my trembling reflection back at me. A man in a black suit appeared from the shadows, built like a wall, eyes hidden behind sunglasses, even though it was dark. You found the boss's wallet, he said flatly. Follow me. I almost said no. Every instinct screamed at me to turn and run, but something heavier kept my feet moving. The corridor stretched on forever, lined with oil paintings and silence. My sneakers squeaked against marble. My pulse drowned out everything else. He stopped in front of a tall set of double doors. He's inside. Wait, I whispered. Shouldn't I? The doors opened before I could finish. He stood at the far end of the room. Black suit, white shirt open at the collar, hands in his pockets. The fire behind him painted his outline in gold and shadow. He didn't look at me right away. He was studying something, a chessboard, half finished, as if I were nothing more than another move to consider. Then he spoke. Most people wouldn't have brought it back. His voice was low, velvet wrapped around steel. I swallowed hard. Most people aren't stupid enough to steal from you. That made him look up, and when he did, when those eyes met mine, the air changed. Dark, intense, almost curious. You know who I am? Everyone does, I said quietly. He smiled faintly, a dangerous curve of lips. And yet you came here anyway. It didn't seem right to keep it. He took a slow step toward me, boots silent against the marble. How much did you see? Just your name. And the cash? I hesitated. Enough to think about it. He chuckled, a low, amused sound that didn't reach his eyes. Honesty. I don't get that often. You should try hanging around better people. That made him stop. For a moment, his gaze softened. Something flickered behind it, gone before I could name it. And what about you, Adrien Russo? Are you a better person? I didn't know how to answer that. He walked to the desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small stack of bills. Then, without warning, he tossed it toward me. The money hit the floor at my feet. Consider it a finder's fee. I didn't do it for money. Everyone does something for money. Then maybe you're talking to the wrong kind of people. Our eyes locked again. His were dark enough to swallow every word I'd been about to say. Or maybe, he said quietly, I finally found someone different. The silence between us was heavy, electric. The fire crackled softly, the only sound in the room. I should have left. I wanted to leave. But something about him, the stillness, the gravity, held me in place. He moved closer again, slow enough that I could hear the whisper of his jacket. The scent of smoke and expensive cologne filled the air between us. You know, he murmured, most people who come through those gates don't walk out the same. Is that supposed to scare me? It should. For the first time I saw it, the danger beneath the calm, the quiet violence coiled behind his voice. But beneath it, there was something else. Something that felt like recognition. Like he was seeing something in me he hadn't seen in anyone for a long time. He reached out, slow, deliberate, and brushed a strand of wet hair from my cheek. The touch sent heat racing through me. You're trembling, he said softly. Maybe I should be. Maybe you should. He let his hand fall away, but his gaze didn't move. Then, with a faint smirk, he said, You can keep the cash. Call it compensation for your honesty. That's not necessary. Neither was returning my wallet. The tension in the room was unbearable, sharp enough to draw blood. Finally, I stepped back, clutching my jacket tighter. I should go. You should, he agreed. But you won't. I froze. What? Because something tells me, Adrien Russo, this isn't the last time you'll find yourself standing in my house. The way he said my name, slow, precise, like a promise, made the air around me feel charged. Good night, I managed, voice barely steady. He smiled again, but it wasn't warmth. It was warning. Good night, Elena. When I stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights glowed through the mist like ghosts. The gates closed behind me with a deep, echoing clang that felt final, like a lock snapping shut. I didn't realize I was still holding the wallet until I got home. Except, it wasn't empty. There was no cash now, just a single note folded inside. In elegant handwriting it read, Next time you find something of mine, come in through the front door. DM. I stared at it, pulse thundering, my reflection shaking in the rain-smeared glass. Somehow I knew. This was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him again. That unreadable stare, the quiet threat behind his calm voice, the way my name sounded coming from his lips. By morning, I'd convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. It was a strange encounter, nothing more. I'd returned a lost wallet. He'd thanked me in his own unsettling way. That should have been the end of it. But then the black car showed up. It was parked outside my building when I stepped out to catch the bus. Sleek. Silent. Wrong for my side of town. The tinted window rolled down just enough for me to see the man inside. It was the same driver who'd led me through those mansion halls. "Adrien Russo," he said. "Mr. Marino requests your presence." I froze. "Requests? You mean, right now?" He nodded once. "He doesn't like to be kept waiting." I looked down at my work uniform. Coffee stains, faded shoes, a name tag that barely stuck anymore. "Tell him I can't. I've got a shift." The driver's expression didn't change. "He insists." The way he said it made it clear there wasn't a choice. I hesitated for a full minute, heart pounding, before stepping into the car. The city blurred past the window as we drove. Every building looked sharper, colder, like I was seeing it from another world entirely. When we turned down the private road that led to the Marino estate, my stomach twisted. This time, the gates opened before we even reached them. The driver parked near the front steps. "He's expecting you," he said simply. Inside, the mansion was quieter than I remembered. The air smelled faintly of rain and wood smoke. I followed the faint sound of piano music until I found him, sitting in the same room as before. But this time, he wasn't alone. A woman stood near the window, tall, elegant, wearing a red dress that looked like sin itself. When her eyes found me, they were sharp enough to cut. "Ah, Elena," Dante said, standing as if he'd been waiting for me all morning. "I was beginning to think you'd forgotten my little note." "I almost did," I said. "You didn't really give me a reason to come back." He smiled faintly. "Maybe curiosity is reason enough." The woman by the window laughed softly, the sound like glass breaking. "She's braver than she looks." "Or more foolish," Dante replied, eyes still on me. "Elena, this is my associate, Sophia." Her gaze swept over me like a blade. "The honest girl," she said, almost amused. I didn't answer. I didn't trust my voice not to shake. Dante motioned for me to sit. "I owe you an apology," he said, his tone smoother than it had any right to be. "I might have unsettled you the other night." I folded my arms. Unsettled is one word for it. "Good," he said quietly. "That means you were paying attention." Before I could ask what that meant, Sophia crossed the room, handed him a folder, and whispered something I couldn't hear. His expression shifted, colder, focused. He nodded, then turned back to me. "You work at the corner cafe on 9th, he said. "Your boss is behind on rent. The landlord's about to sell the property." I stiffened. "How do you know that?" He shrugged one shoulder. "It's my business to know things, especially about people who interest me." "Interest you?" "I don't like debts, Elena," he said. "You returned what was mine. Let me return the favor." He handed me an envelope. I stared at it but didn't move to take it. "What's this?" "Your rent. 6 months. Paid in full." My pulse quickened. "I don't want your money." His eyes hardened slightly. "It's not charity. It's balance." Sophia smirked. "You might want to take it before he changes his mind." Something in me bristled. I met his gaze and said, "If you think you can buy my honesty, you're wrong." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Dante laughed softly, not cruelly, but like he was, genuinely surprised. "No," he said. "I think your honesty is the one thing I couldn't afford if I tried." The conversation shifted. He asked about my job, my family, my dreams, questions that felt harmless but somehow dug deeper than they should. Every time I tried to deflect, he found a way to pull me back in. There was something magnetic about the way he listened. His focus was absolute. It was like standing under sunlight after years in the cold, even though I knew that same light could burn me alive. After an hour, he stood. "Walk with me," he said. The garden behind the mansion was enormous, filled with white roses glistening from the earlier rain. He walked beside me in silence for a while before speaking again. "You think I'm dangerous," he said finally. I know you are, I replied. He glanced down at me, the corner of his mouth curving slightly. And yet, you came back. Because I didn't want you showing up at my work again. Liar. The word landed softly, but it cut deep. I'm not. Yes, you are, he said, stepping closer. You came because you wanted to see for yourself. Because something in you doesn't believe all the stories you've heard. I swallowed hard, trying to find air. And what if I do? Then you'd be smart, he said. But it wouldn't save you. For a heartbeat, we just stared at each other, the world narrowing down to that single impossible space between us. His eyes were darker now, more human and more dangerous at once. Then, somewhere behind us, a phone rang. He sighed, stepped back, and pulled it from his pocket. Yes, he said sharply. He listened for a moment, his face turning to stone. Handle it. When he looked at me again, the warmth was gone. Only the boss remained. I have to take care of something, he said. Sophia will see you out. I can find my own way, I said quickly. He hesitated, then nodded. Next time, Elena, don't come uninvited. Next time? He gave me that same dangerous half-smile. There's always a next time. Back outside, the air felt colder. I walked fast, trying to put distance between myself and that house, but the echo of his voice followed me all the way home. When I reached my apartment, something was waiting by the door. A single white rose, still wet from the rain. No note, no explanation. Just the rose. I stared at it for a long time, heart racing, then looked up and scanned the street. No car, no movement, nothing but the quiet hum of the city. I picked it up slowly, the petals soft against my skin. And that's when I saw the faint imprint on one of the leaves. A small, perfect fingerprint pressed into the moisture. His fingerprint. Dante Marino's. He hadn't just found out where I lived. He wanted me to know that he had. The rose stayed on my kitchen table all night. I told myself I should throw it away. Burn it. Pretend. It never appeared. But every time I reached for it, something in me hesitated. It wasn't fear exactly. It was something quieter, heavier. A strange pull I didn't understand. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going back to that mansion. Whatever Dante Marino thought he wanted from me, I was done. Except, of course, life doesn't care about decisions. When I got to the cafe, my boss, Rita, was waiting near the counter, her eyes wide. Elena, she said, you didn't tell me you had connections. Connections? She handed me an envelope, thick, sealed with wax. This came early this morning. Some guy in a suit dropped it off. Said it was from your employer. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with the cafe's lease renewal stamped approved. Rent paid for the next year. In full. And at the bottom, in perfect handwriting, a debt repaid, DM. My throat went dry. Rita was still talking. Whoever this man is, you better thank him. He just saved this place. I forced a smile. Yeah, I whispered. I'll do that. But inside, panic bloomed. I hadn't asked for his help. I didn't want his money. Yet he'd inserted himself into my world anyway, weaving invisible threads I couldn't untangle. And worse, part of me wasn't sure I wanted to. That night, I dreamed of him. Firelight on marble. His voice low and smooth, saying my name like it meant something. When I woke up, my pulse was racing, my hands clutching the sheets. I dragged myself to the window and looked out at the city lights. Then I saw it. The same black car parked across the street. Watching. It was gone by the time I blinked, but I knew I hadn't imagined it. I grabbed my phone, scrolled through the contacts, and stopped at one I hadn't meant to save but had anyway. Dante Marino. No message. just his name. My thumb hovered over it for a full minute before I finally set the phone down and whispered to the empty room, "What do you want from me?" The answer came 2 days later. I was closing up the cafe when 2 men walked in. Both wore dark coats and carried themselves with the kind of quiet confidence that made the air tense. "Adrien Russo?" one of them asked. I froze. "Who's askin'?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "A friend of the Marino family." My stomach dropped. "What do you want?" "Mr. Marino would like to see you. It's urgent." I already told him. "It's not optional." Before I could protest, one of them took my arm, not roughly, but firmly enough that I knew arguing wouldn't help. As they led me outside, I saw the car waiting, not Dante's usual one, but something older, darker. When the door closed behind me, the city disappeared. This time, they didn't take me to the mansion. The car stopped in a narrow alley behind a warehouse near the docks. I could hear the ocean, the steady crash of waves against concrete. The man opened my door. Inside. The moment I stepped through the metal door, I understood why I was there. Dante stood in the center of the warehouse, surrounded by half a dozen men. The atmosphere was electric, charged. His white shirt was rolled up to the elbows, his tie loosened. He looked furious, not the kind of anger that exploded, but the kind that killed quietly. When he saw me, something in his expression shifted. "Let her go," he said to the guards. They stepped back immediately. I swallowed hard. "You sent for me?" His jaw clenched. "No, I told them to keep you away from this place." One of the guards stammered. "You thought wrong." His voice cut like a blade. "Get out!" The men scattered. Only he and I remained. I looked around. The dim light, the smell of oil and salt, the faint sound of a chain clinking in the shadows. "What is this place?" I asked quietly. He exhaled, rubbed a hand over his face. "A mistake. One I didn't want you to see." "You mean your business," I said. He didn't deny it. "You shouldn't be here, Elena." "Then stop pulling me in." He looked up sharply, eyes burning. "You think I'm doing this on purpose?" "Aren't you?" Something in his gaze softened, but his voice stayed low, dangerous. "If I could stay away from you, I would." The confession hit harder than I expected. I didn't trust him. Not really. But the raw honesty in his tone cracked something open in me. "Why?" I asked. He stepped closer. "Because you remind me of something I lost a long time ago." I wanted to ask what that meant, but before I could, a gunshot echoed from outside. He reacted instantly, pulling me behind a stack of crates just as the door burst open and bullets tore through the air. "Stay down!" he hissed, drawing his gun. My heart slammed against my ribs as chaos erupted. Shouting, gunfire, the sound of men hitting the ground. Dante moved like he'd done this 1,000 times, every motion precise, ruthless, controlled. When the noise stopped, he turned back to me, breathing hard but steady. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, unable to speak. He reached for me, his hand brushing my cheek. "I told you," he said softly. "My world isn't safe." I stared up at him, trembling. "And yet you brought me into it." He didn't answer. Not with words. Instead, he pulled me closer, his forehead resting against mine. For a moment, everything went still. The smell of gunpowder, the sting of fear, the faint tremor of his breath against my skin. Then he whispered, "You shouldn't have found that wallet." Before I could ask what he meant, headlights flashed across the room, and more cars screeched to a stop outside. He grabbed my hand. "Come on." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safer." We ran through a side door and into the night. The docks stretched out before us. Steel and shadow and the cold wind off the ocean. Behind us, gunfire flared again. He shoved me toward a waiting car. Get in. I did. He slid into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and gunned the engine. The tires screamed against wet pavement as we sped away. I clutched the seatbelt, heart still racing. Who were they? Enemies, he said. The kind who don't care who gets caught in the crossfire. And now I'm one of them? He glanced at me, his eyes dark and unreadable. Not yet, but you're close. The car didn't slow until we reached the outskirts of the city. He parked in front of an old villa overlooking the sea. Isolated, beautiful, and somehow mournful. This is one of my safe houses, he said quietly. You'll stay here tonight. I'm not staying anywhere with you. Elena. His voice softened. Please, just tonight. The word please caught me off guard. I followed him inside. The villa was dimly lit, filled with the scent of sea salt and old wood. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed me one, and sat across from me by the fire. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, You could have left me there. He looked up. I don't leave the people I care about. Care about? His jaw tightened. Don't make me say it. My chest ached. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the gunfire still rang in my ears. You're dangerous, I whispered. He nodded. Yes. But I'd never hurt you. Our eyes met, the firelight dancing between us, and for the first time, I saw it. Not the monster people whispered about, but the man underneath. Wounded, tired, alone. And that scared me more than anything else. The sea was still raging when dawn broke. Waves slammed against the cliffs below the villa, wind howling through cracked shutters. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of last night. The gunfire, the shadows, Dante's hand gripping mine as we ran. When I finally stepped into the living room, he was already there. He stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, his voice low but sharp. I caught fragments, the Lombardis, leak inside, no survivors. Then he ended the call, turned, and saw me watching. You should be resting, he said. I folded my arms. Hard to sleep when people are trying to kill you. His mouth twitched. Not a smile. Not quite. You get used to it. That's not comforting. I wasn't trying to comfort you. For a moment, we just stared at each other. There was something in his eyes that morning. Not the cold control I'd seen before, but exhaustion. Regret, maybe. The kind that settles deep, like an old scar that never quite fades. I stepped closer. Who were they? The men at the docks. Lombardis, he said simply. Another family. We've had peace for years, but someone broke it last night. Because of me? He hesitated just long enough for me to know the answer. I sank onto the couch. You said your world wasn't safe. You didn't say it would get me killed. He exhaled slowly. You're not going to die, Elena. Not while I can stop it. And if you can't? He looked at me then, really looked, and said quietly, Then I'll make sure they burn for trying. It should have terrified me. It did. But beneath the fear, a strange warmth flickered, a dangerous comfort in knowing he meant every word. He poured coffee, handed me a mug, and sat across from me. The silence stretched between us until I couldn't stand it anymore. Why me, Dante? I asked. You could have anyone. Women who understand your world, who won't flinch when the guns come out. Why keep pulling me into this? He didn't answer right away. His thumb traced the rim of his cup, his expression unreadable. When I was 14, he said finally, my mother was killed in a car bombing meant for my father. She was the only good thing he ever had, and he destroyed her without even pulling the trigger. I froze. I'm sorry. He shook his head. Don't be. I learned early that goodness is a weakness people exploit. I built my empire on that lesson. He looked up, his eyes hard but haunted. Then you walked into my house, trembling, defiant, ready to face me like I was just another man. I didn't have much of a choice. You did, he said, but you still came back. He set his cup down and leaned forward. You remind me of her, Elena. My mother. She believed people could be better than the world made them. I used to think she was wrong. His voice dropped lower. You make me wonder if she wasn't. My throat tightened. I didn't know what to say. Before I could speak, there was a knock at the door. He stood immediately, his body tensing. Stay here. Through the glass, I saw two men in suits waiting outside. Dante opened the door halfway, murmured something in Italian, and then his tone turned icy. I caught one word. Tradimento. Betrayal. The next sound was a gunshot. I gasped, leaping to my feet. One of the men collapsed to the ground outside. Dante's other guard dragged the body away as if it were routine. Dante stepped back inside, closing the door quietly behind him. Was that necessary? I demanded, my voice shaking. Yes, he said simply. He was unarmed. He was a traitor. I stared at him, unable to process the calm certainty in his tone. You killed him like it was nothing. His eyes flicked to mine, colder now. Don't confuse mercy with weakness. I took a step back. I don't even know who you are. Yes, you do, he said softly. You just don't want to admit it. The worst part was, he was right. By afternoon, the storm had quieted, leaving behind a heavy stillness. I walked down to the cliffs alone, needing distance, needing air. The ocean stretched endless and gray beneath me. I could still hear echoes of his voice, his confession, that single gunshot. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I told you not to wander off, Dante said. I didn't turn. You can't control everything, you know. I can control enough. I turned then, meeting his gaze. Is that how you survive? By deciding who lives and who doesn't? His expression flickered. Pain, then steel. It's how I keep the people I care about alive. I didn't ask for that. No, he said quietly. But you have it. I wanted to argue, to throw his words back at him, but then he stepped closer. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, even through the chill air. His hand lifted, hesitated, then brushed a strand of hair from my face. Tell me to stop, he murmured. My heart raced. Would you? He smiled faintly. No. And then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, controlled only by the thin line between passion and danger. His hand slid to the back of my neck, holding me there, as if letting go might undo him completely. When we finally broke apart, the air between us crackled. This is a bad idea, I whispered. I know. We'll hurt each other. Probably. He smiled again, but there was something broken behind it. But for the first time in years, I don't care. That night, he didn't send me away. We sat by the fire, the silence between us heavier than words. At some point, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. He told me stories. Not the polished lies of a man used to power, but fragments of truth. How he'd built his empire from nothing. How he'd lost everyone who ever mattered. When he finally fell asleep on the couch, the shadows softened around him. He looked younger, almost peaceful. I stood there, watching him, torn between everything I should do and everything I wanted to. Then I saw it. The scar on his chest, just above his heart. Old, but deep. The kind you don't get by accident. I traced the air above it without touching him, and for the first time, I wondered if the blood on his hands had started with his own. The next morning, I woke to the sound of breaking glass. I stumbled into the living room. Dante was gone. The front window was shattered. On the floor, a single white rose lay crushed beneath boot prints, and beside it, a bullet casing. Someone had been there, and they'd left a message. A single card lay on the table, marked with a crimson seal I didn't recognize. But Dante did. He appeared in the doorway, blood on his sleeve, eyes burning with fury. "Who did this?" I whispered. He picked up the card, crumpled it in his fist. "The Lombardis," he said. "They've declared war." He turned to me, his voice dark and final. "You're coming with me. From now on, you don't go anywhere without protection." "Dante, this isn't a request." The storm I'd thought had ended was just beginning. I didn't remember the drive. One moment we were leaving the shattered villa. The next I was in a black SUV speeding through rain-slick streets, Dante's men flanking us like shadows. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every time lightning flashed across the windshield, I saw the crushed white rose again, the bullet casing glinting beside it. Dante sat beside me, silent. His shirt sleeve was still damp with blood. I wanted to ask whose, but part of me didn't want to know. Finally, I said, "You're bleeding." He didn't look at me. "It's not mine." That was supposed to comfort me. It didn't. The car turned down a private road lined with iron gates and stone walls. At the end stood another mansion, darker and older than the first. Guards opened the gate without a word. When the doors closed behind us, I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Dante gestured toward the stairs. "You'll stay here until it's over." "And how long is that?" He didn't answer. I stepped closer, my frustration breaking through the fear. "You can't keep me locked up, Dante. I'm not one of your—" He turned, fast, eyes blazing. "You are under my protection, Elena. That means you do what I say." Something inside me snapped. "I didn't ask for your protection. I just found your damn wallet." He froze. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then he said quietly, "And now people want you dead because of it." His voice wasn't angry anymore. It was tired. "I'm trying to keep you alive," he said. "Don't make me regret it." The silence that followed was thick enough to drown in. I looked away. "You can't live like this forever." He gave a small, bitter smile. "That's the point. I'm not meant to." Later, I found my way to the balcony outside my room. The air smelled of gunpowder and rain. Below, men were moving cars, setting up patrols. The estate buzzed with tension, like a city preparing for war. I wrapped my arms around myself and whispered, "What did I get myself into?" "Something you can't walk away from," came his voice behind me. I turned. Dante leaned against the doorframe, the dim light carving sharp lines across his face. "You always appear when I least want you to," I said. He smiled faintly. "You say that, but you never tell me to leave." I couldn't argue. He stepped onto the balcony, close enough that the rain from his hair brushed my forehead. "They'll come again," he said. "The Lombardis don't forgive, but neither do I." There was something in his tone, not threat, but promise. I studied him. Why is this war happening now? His jaw tightened. Because I showed weakness. Me. Yes, I swallowed hard. Then why not just send me away? Because they'd find you. And because... He hesitated. Because I can't. The words hung between us like smoke. Then he reached into his pocket and handed me something. It was a small silver cross, simple but heavy. "It belonged to my mother," he said. "She wore it until the day she died." I stared at it. "Why give it to me?" "So they know who you belong to." I flinched. "I don't belong to anyone." His eyes darkened, but his voice was almost tender. "That's what I told myself too." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old house made my heart jump. Somewhere downstairs, men murmured, loading weapons, making plans. I got up, pacing the room, the cross still clutched in my hand. Part of me wanted to run, to pack a bag and disappear before dawn. But another part, the one that remembered the way he'd looked at me on the cliffs, whispered something dangerous. Stay. When I finally did sleep, I dreamed of fire. I was standing in a burning field, the smoke choking the sky, and Dante was there, walking through the flames like they couldn't touch him. His hand reached out for mine, and when I took it, the fire vanished. But when I looked up, his eyes were gone, replaced by darkness. I woke to shouting. The house was alive with noise. Gunfire in the distance, the crackle of radios, boots on marble floors. I threw on a coat and ran into the hall. Dante was there, already dressed, a pistol in his hand. "What's happening?" I demanded. "They found us," he said. "Stay behind me." He led me down the stairs, moving fast but precise. The front doors were open, men taking cover behind pillars. The night outside flashed with gunfire. I crouched behind a wall, heart pounding. "Dante, we have to get out." He cut me off. "No one leaves. Not yet." Then he stepped into the open, shouting orders in Italian, firing with deadly calm. It was terrifying and mesmerizing. The same hands that had held me now wielding death without hesitation. A car exploded outside, heat slamming against the walls. I screamed, covering my ears. Dante turned back to me. Blood splattered across his shirt, his voice low but steady. "Run! Go through the cellar. Matteo will take you." "No!" I shouted. "Not without you." "Elena, I'm not leaving you." Something in my voice stopped him. For a moment, the chaos faded, and it was just us again. Firelight, rain, and the sound of our hearts beating too fast. Then a shot rang out. Dante staggered. I froze, horror flooding my veins. Blood spread across his side, dark and fast. He looked down at it like it was an inconvenience, then at me. "Go," he said through clenched teeth. "Not without you," I repeated. He smiled, faint, fierce. "You're stubborn." I pressed my hand against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "You're not dying on me." "Wouldn't dream of it." His men dragged us both toward the cellar stairs. Behind us, the windows shattered. Dante's last words before the doors slammed shut echoed through the corridor. "They want a war," he said. "Then I'll give them hell." When the shooting finally stopped, dawn had begun to rise, pale light cutting through the smoke. I sat beside him on the cold stone floor, his head resting against the wall. His blood stained my hands, my clothes. He opened his eyes slowly, breathing shallow. "You should have left." "And let you die?" He chuckled weakly. "You really don't listen, do you?" "Not when you're wrong." He stared at me for a long moment. Then, softer than I'd ever heard, he said, "If I don't make it..." I pressed a finger to his lips. "Don't." His eyes closed again, and I whispered, "You'll make it. You have to." Above us, the house groaned. Footsteps approached. Matteo's voice called down, "Boss, it's over, for now." Dante nodded, then looked at me, a strange calm settling over him. "It's only beginning, Elena. But they made one mistake tonight." "What mistake?" He smiled, dark and dangerous. "They tried to take what's mine." I didn't leave his side for 2 days. Dante slept fitfully, his fever rising and falling like the tide. Matteo's men had managed to stop the bleeding, but the wound was deep, a reminder of just how fragile even a man like him could be. Every hour, I changed the bandages, poured water into his mouth, whispered things I wasn't sure he could hear. On the third night, he woke. "Where am I?" His voice was rough, unfamiliar, stripped of all the control he wore like armor. In the cellar, I said quietly. You lost a lot of blood. Matteo says you'll live. He tried to sit up. I pressed him back down. Don't move. He stared at me, his hand brushing mine. You've been here the whole time. Someone had to keep you alive. He smiled faintly. That's usually my line. I didn't smile back. You almost died, Dante. I've almost died a lot of times. Not like this. He looked at me then, and I realized what I was really saying. Not you almost died, but I almost lost you. He seemed to understand because his expression softened, the walls he kept around him cracking just enough for light to get through. I'm sorry, he murmured. For what? For bringing you into this. I swallowed. You didn't. Yes, I did. The moment you picked up that wallet, your fate changed. My name became your curse. The way he said it made me shiver. I don't believe in curses, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. You should, he whispered, because loving me is one. Later that night, when the others had gone to rest, I sat by the single candle flickering in the corner. The air was heavy with smoke and silence. Dante stirred again. You should sleep. I can't. Because of me? Because every time I close my eyes, I hear gunfire. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said softly, Do you want to know why they want me dead? I hesitated. Yes. He took a deep breath. My family built this city's underworld, long before I was born. My father taught me that power is control, and control means sacrifice. When he died, I took his place. I thought I could run it differently. And? I was wrong. I leaned forward. What happened? He looked away, his voice low. I trusted the wrong people, made enemies I shouldn't have. The Lombardis were one of them. I killed their heir after he tried to take what wasn't his. What do you mean? His eyes found mine again. He tried to force himself on someone I cared about. I froze. Who? His gaze didn't waver. My sister. My heart twisted. Where is she now? Gone, he said, because I couldn't save her in time. The silence that followed was heavy, aching. I wanted to reach for him, but something about the way he stared at the wall told me he wasn't really here. He was somewhere far away, reliving every second. Finally, I said, You did what any brother would have done. He looked at me sharply. No. I did what a killer would do. There's a difference. I shook my head. Not when it comes to protecting someone you love. Something in his expression broke then, not entirely, but enough for me to see the man behind the legend. Go to sleep, he whispered, but it sounded like thank you. The next morning I woke to the sound of him pacing. You shouldn't be up, I said. He smirked. You sound like Matteo. I'm serious. So am I. He limped toward the table, pulling on his jacket. I can't sit here while they regroup. I crossed my arms. You can't fight if you can barely stand. He gave a low laugh. You really think that's going to stop me? Then you're an idiot. He looked at me, and for the first time there was no anger in his eyes, only admiration. No one talks to me like that. Maybe they should. He took a step closer. Careful, Elena. You're starting to sound like you belong here. I stared at him, pulse racing. And if I did? His voice dropped. Then I'd have to protect you from everyone, including myself. He moved past me, but before he reached the door, I caught his arm. Dante, please, don't go out there yet. He stopped, not turning around. If something happens to you... He looked over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. Then what? Then I don't know what I'd do. The words escaped before I could stop them. He turned fully then, closing the distance between us until I could feel his breath against my skin. His eyes searched mine. dark and full of things neither of us could say. "Don't fall for me, Elena," he whispered. "I'm the wrong kind of salvation." "Then stop saving me," I said. He smiled. Slow, dangerous, beautiful. "I can't." By dusk, the war began again. The Lombardis struck one of his safe houses on the south side. Dante refused to stay behind. I followed him anyway. The city was chaos. Sirens in the distance, gunfire echoing off concrete. The streets smelled of oil and blood. When we reached the safe house, it was already burning. Dante jumped out of the car before it stopped moving. "Stay here," he ordered. But I didn't. I ran after him, heart hammering, the world blurring into noise and smoke. Inside, the air was thick with ash. I could hear shouts, Dante barking orders, men dragging the wounded out. Then I saw him, standing in the middle of the flames, his coat blackened, his face lit by the inferno. He looked like the devil himself, beautiful, terrible, unstoppable. When it was over, when the fire trucks wailed in the distance and the last gunshot faded, he turned toward me. "You disobeyed me," he said. I was shaking. "You were going to die." He stalked toward me, grabbed my face in his hands. "And what would you have done then, huh? Thrown yourself into the fire too?" "Maybe," I said, voice trembling. He froze. Something shifted behind his eyes. Then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, hungry, like all the pain and power he'd ever carried had finally found somewhere to go. When he pulled back, his breath was ragged. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "You shouldn't have kissed me." "Then we're both damned." Back at the estate, we said nothing. The silence between us was louder than the gunfire. He poured a drink, his hands still shaking slightly. I stood in the doorway watching him. "Why do you keep pushing me away?" He stared into the glass. "Because everything I touch burns." I walked toward him slowly. "Maybe I'm not afraid of fire." He looked up, eyes blazing. "You should be." I stopped inches from him, feeling the pull like gravity. "Then burn me." He set the glass down. The sound was soft but final, like a gun clicking before it fires. He stepped closer. "You don't know what you're asking." "I know exactly what I'm asking." And then his hand was at the back of my neck, pulling me in again, his lips rough and tender all at once. This time, it wasn't war. It was surrender. When we finally broke apart, he whispered against my skin, "If you stay, Elena, there's no going back." "I already know." "Then you're mine." I met his gaze. "No, Dante. We belong to each other." He closed his eyes, like the words hurt more than bullets. And somewhere deep in the night, the devil made his first promise. Not to his enemies, but to the girl who refused to leave his side. The morning after the fire was too quiet. No gunfire, no shouting. Just the low hum of the generator and the faint scent of smoke still clinging to Dante's clothes. I woke alone. For one breathless second, I thought maybe it had all been a dream. The kiss, the flames, his promise whispered like sin against my skin. But then I saw his coat hanging over the chair, the black silk tie draped carelessly beside it, and I knew it had happened. Every moment of it. When I walked into the hall, Matteo was waiting. He looked exhausted. "He's in the chapel." "Chapel?" I repeated, surprised. He nodded. "The old one. He goes there after every war." My pulse quickened. "War?" Matteo's gaze flicked to me, unreadable. "That's what you call it when men like him try to make peace with their sins." I hesitated, but then I went. The chapel sat behind the mansion, half hidden by ivy and thyme. The doors creaked when I pushed them open. Candlelight flickered across cracked pews and faded icons. And there he was, kneeling at the altar, head bowed, hands clasped so tight I could see the tendons straining in his wrists. For a long moment, I didn't move. The sight of him, this man who ruled through fear and steel, praying in silence. It stole the breath from my lungs. I stepped closer. Dante? He didn't look up. You shouldn't be here. You keep saying that, I whispered, and yet I always am. He let out a slow exhale, the sound almost a laugh. You're stubborn. You say that like it's a bad thing. Finally he turned. His eyes were different in the candlelight, softer, haunted. I've killed men in this room, he said quietly. And I've buried pieces of myself with them. I swallowed. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what you've walked into. He rose, every movement deliberate, graceful despite the healing wound. I'm not the man you think I am, Elena. Then show me who you are. He smiled faintly, the kind that hides pain. You wouldn't want to see that. Yes, I would. He stared at me for a long time, then said, Come with me. He led me through a narrow hallway behind the chapel, down to a locked door. The air grew colder. The smell of iron filled my lungs. When the door opened, I understood why. It wasn't a cellar, it was a vault. Stacks of ledgers, guns lined on metal racks, crates marked with foreign seals, and in the center, a single table covered in old photographs. He picked one up and handed it to me. It was a younger Dante, no scars, no shadows, standing beside a man who looked just like him. My father, he said. I looked at the other photos. Weddings, funerals, headlines. Names circled in red ink. Why keep all this? I asked softly. Because every name is a debt. Every face a ghost. He moved to another drawer, pulled out a file, and dropped it on the table. My name was on the cover. I froze. What is that? He hesitated, then opened it. The night you found my wallet wasn't an accident. My stomach twisted. What do you mean? I was being watched, he said. Followed. The man who attacked you that night, the one you saw by the cliffs, he wasn't after me. He was after whoever picked up that wallet. I stared at him, disbelief turning to dread. So you knew? I suspected. That's why I brought you here. I stepped back. You used me. His voice sharpened. I protected you. No, Dante, you trapped me. He slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. Do you think I wanted this? You were supposed to take the money and disappear, but instead, you walked straight into my world. I felt tears burn behind my eyes. You could have told me the truth. He looked at me, his face unreadable. Would you have stayed if I had? I opened my mouth, but no sound came. He stepped closer. You see, that's the curse. You hate what I am, but you can't walk away. I shook my head. You're wrong. Then leave. The words hit like a gunshot. I stared at him, trembling. You don't mean that. His eyes darkened. I do. The silence between us was unbearable. My heart hammered against my ribs as I whispered, Why are you doing this? Because I can't protect you if you stay, he said, his voice breaking despite himself. And if something happens to you, I'll burn this whole city to the ground. I took a step closer. Maybe that's not what you're afraid of. Maybe you're afraid that if I stay, you'll have to feel something again. For the first time, Dante Vale had no words. That night, I packed my bag. The silver cross he'd given me lay on the bed, gleaming in the candlelight. I should have left it. Instead, I slipped it around my neck. When I reached the front gate, Matteo was waiting. You really think he'll let you go? He asked. He doesn't own me. Matteo smiled sadly. No, but he's already lost too much to let you walk away without bleeding for it. Before I could respond, a black car pulled up. 2 of Dante's men stepped out. Miss Rossi, one of them said, you'll need to come with us. I froze. Why? Orders from the boss. I looked past them, back toward the mansion. I could feel him watching from somewhere behind those windows. My pulse raced. Tell him I'm done being one of his debts. And then I ran. The city swallowed me. Rain slicked the streets again, neon lights bleeding into puddles. I found a motel on the outskirts and locked myself inside. For the first time in weeks, there was no gunfire, no bodyguards, no whispered orders in Italian. Just silence. I thought freedom would feel like air. Instead, it felt like drowning. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. The way he'd looked when he said then leave. The way his voice had cracked just before he'd said it. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to forget him. But I couldn't. Because beneath all the power and blood, I'd seen something he couldn't hide. A man who'd forgotten how to be human until the night he met me. I didn't know how long I sat there before I heard the knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps. My heart stilled. I crossed the room, hand shaking, and peered through the crack. Dante stood on the other side, soaked to the bone, eyes burning with something between fury and relief. "Don't run again," he said quietly. I opened the door just enough to whisper, "You told me to leave." "I know," he said, "and I was wrong." "Why are you here?" He stepped closer, his voice breaking. "Because I can't breathe without you." And in that moment, every wall I'd built collapsed. He reached out, brushing his thumb against my jaw. "You said I was afraid to feel. You were right." I swallowed hard. "And now?" "Now I'm terrified." I didn't move as he leaned in, his forehead resting against mine. "Whatever happens next," he whispered, "you stay with me. No more lies." "I want the truth, Dante. All of it." His gaze met mine, dark, fierce, unflinching. "Then you'll have it." But there was something in his voice, something that told me the truth wasn't going to save us. It was going to destroy everything. Elena learns that her involvement was never an accident. She was marked from the start. She runs, but Dante follows, confessing what he's never told anyone, that he can't live without her. The next chapter will expose the final truth about the war, the betrayals, and the cost of love. I didn't sleep that night. Dante sat across from me in the motel room, his soaked clothes clinging to his skin, the low hum of the rain filling the silence between us. He looked out of place, too powerful for this small, flickering space, too dangerous to be sitting so still. "You said I'd have the truth," I finally whispered. "Start talking." His eyes lifted to mine. "You deserve more than the half-truths I've been giving you." "Then give me everything," I said, my voice steady even though my heart wasn't. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the light caught the faint scar at his temple. "The men after me aren't from a rival family. They're my own blood." The words sank into the air like a crack of thunder. "My brother," he said, quieter now. "Luca. He's the one who ordered the hit that night. The one who wanted the wallet found." I froze. But why? He ran a hand through his wet hair. "Because that wallet held the names of our international accounts. Routes, identities, safe houses. If he had it, he could dismantle everything my father built." "And me?" I whispered. He looked up, eyes dark and weary. "You were supposed to be bait. Luca wanted someone innocent to get caught in the middle, someone I'd try to protect. He wanted to see how far I'd go." A bitter laugh slipped from my lips. "And you played right into his hands." "Yes," Dante admitted, "but not for the reason you think." He stood, pacing slowly, every movement taut with restraint. "At first it was strategy, a way to control the fallout, but then He stopped himself, jaw clenching. Then what? His eyes met mine. Then I started to care. The air between us trembled. I shook my head, trying to breathe. You're telling me your brother tried to destroy you, and you still came after me? I couldn't let him touch you. The emotion in his voice caught me off guard. For a moment, the boss was gone, and all that remained was the man beneath. Dante? He looked away, voice low. He's coming for me, Elena. For both of us. The next morning, the city was gray again. Heavy clouds pressed against the skyline, and the streets glistened from last night's rain. We didn't talk much as we drove back toward the mansion. Every mile closer, I could feel the air thickening with danger. When we arrived, Matteo was waiting by the gate, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. He's inside, he said simply. Luca? Dante asked. Matteo nodded once. With a dozen men. Dante's eyes darkened. He's bold. Or desperate. I stepped out of the car, my pulse quickening. What are you going to do? Dante turned to me, his voice like low steel. End this. Before I could stop him, he was gone, walking into the mansion as if walking into war. Inside, the tension was suffocating. Luca Vale stood in the great hall, a mirror image of his brother. Same sharp jaw, same dark hair, but his eyes held no warmth, only greed. Little brother, Luca said with a mocking smile. Finally come home. Dante's voice was steady. This isn't your home anymore. You think you can erase me? Luca stepped closer, spreading his arms. Father's empire was built on blood. Mine just has more of it. I stayed near the doorway, heart pounding. Luca's gaze flicked to me. And this must be the reason you're losing control. His smirk turned cruel. She's prettier than I expected. Dante moved faster than thought. 1 second, Luca was smirking. The next, Dante had him by the collar, shoving him against the marble wall. Don't, Dante growled. Don't even look at her. Luca laughed, even as blood trickled from his lip. So it's true. The great Dante Vale, undone by a girl who doesn't know what she stepped into. Dante's hand tightened. She knows enough. Does she? Luca's tone softened to venom. Does she know you killed our father? The world stopped. My breath caught. What? Dante's grip faltered for half a key. Second, just enough for Luca to wrench free. That's right, Luca said, eyes glinting. Our father didn't die of a heart attack, did he, brother? Enough, Dante snapped. Luca smirked. You pulled the trigger because he wanted me to take over. Because he said you were too soft. Because... The gunshot cut him off. The echo was deafening. Luca staggered back, clutching his shoulder, not his chest. Dante hadn't killed him. But he could have. Get him out, Dante ordered Matteo, who had appeared like a shadow. Now. As they dragged Luca away, Dante turned toward me. His expression was unreadable, but his hands were trembling. Is it true? I whispered. His silence was answer enough. Dante, tell me the truth. He looked up, eyes haunted. Yes, I killed him. The room tilted. Why? He took a step closer. Because he was going to hand everything to Luca, and Luca would have burned this city to the ground. You've seen what he's capable of. That doesn't make it right. I know, he said softly. But it made it necessary. The honesty in his voice broke me in ways the lies never had. I turned away, trying to steady my breath. You always say you did it to protect people. But what happens when I'm the one who needs protecting from you? Dante didn't answer. He just looked at me, the man and the monster both reflected in his eyes. And for a moment, I saw the loneliness that had been killing him long before I ever showed up. Later that night, I found him in his study, staring at the city lights. The rain had stopped, but thunder still rolled in the distance. "I should go," I said quietly. He didn't turn. "If you walk away now, he'll find you." Maybe that's a risk I have to take. Finally, he looked at me. "You're not leaving because of danger. You're leaving because of me." I swallowed hard. "You're right." He took a step forward. "Then at least let me give you one thing before you do." From the drawer, he pulled out a black envelope and handed it to me. Inside were documents, passports, money, enough to disappear. "I had Mateo prepare it weeks ago," he said, "just in case." I stared at it, speechless. Why? Because I knew this day would come. My throat tightened. "You always knew I'd leave." "No," he said softly. "I just knew I might have to let you." He reached up, brushing his fingers against the silver cross still hanging around my neck. "Keep that. It's the only thing of me that isn't tainted." The words cracked something deep inside me. I didn't move as he leaned forward, pressing his lips to my forehead. A kiss that felt like both a promise and a goodbye. When I finally spoke, my voice was barely a whisper. "If I walk away, what happens to you?" He smiled, faintly, heartbreakingly. "I'll do what I've always done. Survive." But I didn't believe him. Not really, because I'd seen the truth in his eyes. The kind of truth that doesn't survive alone. So I turned toward the door, then stopped. "Dante," I said, without looking back, "if you ever decide to stop surviving and start living, you'll know where to find me." I heard his breath hitch, but he didn't move. I walked out into the night, the rain beginning to fall again, each drop echoing like the heartbeat of a story that wasn't finished. It had been 3 days since I left the mansion, and every hour stretched like a lifetime. I'd gone back to my old apartment, the tiny one-bedroom above the coffee shop, where the smell of roasted beans lingered in the walls and the rain leaked through the corners of the window pane. It should have felt like safety. It didn't. Every sound on the street below made me jump. Every shadow looked like a threat. And no matter how many times I told myself it was over, I still woke in the middle of the night with his voice in my head. "If you walk away now, he'll find you." He had been right. Because when the knock came, it wasn't soft. It was a pounding. 3 sharp hits that made the glass tremble. I froze. Then a voice. Deep, cold, familiar. "Open the door, Elena." It wasn't Dante. "Luca," I whispered. I backed away, searching for something, anything to defend myself with. My phone lay on the counter, the screen cracked, the battery dead. There was no one to call. The door burst open. Luca stepped inside like a man arriving for dinner, not invasion. His white shirt was stained with something dark, his left arm bandaged. But his smile was perfect, his voice smooth. "You've been hard to find. Get out." My voice came out sharper than I felt. He glanced around the apartment, his eyes landing on the photo of me and my mother on the bookshelf. He picked it up, brushing a finger over the glass. "You're just as he described you." "Who?" "My brother." He looked up, his eyes glittering. "He used to talk about you, you know. Late nights when he thought no one was listening." I shook my head. "You're lying." "Am I?" He set the frame down gently. "He said you made him feel something he hadn't in years. He said you reminded him of what he could have been. If our father hadn't ruined us." My heart pounded harder. "Why are you here?" He smiled. "To finish what he couldn't." Before I could move, he pulled a pistol from his coat and leveled it at me. "Dante took everything from me," Luca said. "The family, the money, the respect. But now, I'll take everything from him, starting with you." A sound behind him broke the silence. A creak, a whisper of movement. Luca turned. The shot came before he could aim again. He stumbled forward, his gun clattering to the floor, Behind him stood Dante, soaked from the rain, eyes burning like a storm. For a second, no one breathed. "Hello, brother," Dante said. Luca's lips curved into a bloody smile. "You always did have perfect timing." "Step away from her," Dante growled. Luca staggered, gripping his side. "You won't shoot me. You can't kill what's left of you." "Watch me." The gun stayed trained, unwavering. But I could see Dante's hands shaking. He wasn't the monster his brother thought he was. He never had been. "Go," Dante told me without looking away from Luca. "Now." "I'm not leaving you again," I said. "Elena," he warned, voice low. "No." I moved closer, my breath trembling. "You don't have to do this." Luca laughed weakly. "How touching. The girl thinks she can save you." I ignored him. "Dante, please." He turned his eyes to me and the pain in them broke my heart. "It ends tonight." Luca lunged. Another shot, louder, final. Luca hit the ground. His body went still. For a moment the world was silent except for the rain tapping against the windows. Dante lowered the gun slowly, his chest rising and falling like he'd been running for years. "It's over," I whispered. But he didn't answer. He just stared at his brother's body, then at his own shaking hands. We left the apartment before the sirens came. Matteo's car was waiting in the alley, and for the first time, I didn't argue when Dante told me to get in. No one spoke on the drive back to the mansion. The city lights blurred by, streaks of gold and red in the rain. My mind kept replaying the sound, the gunshot, the way Dante's expression hadn't changed. When we finally arrived, the mansion felt colder than before. Empty, despite all its gold and glass. Dante walked straight to his father's old study and poured himself a drink. I stood in the doorway, unsure if I should say anything. "You saved me," I said quietly. He didn't look up. "No, I destroyed the last of my family." "You had no choice." "There's always a choice." I stepped closer. "And what would you have done? Let him kill me?" He turned then, his voice cracking through the silence. "I don't know anymore, Elena. Every time I try to protect something, I end up breaking it." I shook my head, tears stinging. "That's not true." He laughed, bitter and low. "You still don't see what I am." "I see you," I whispered. The man who risked everything for someone he didn't have to care about. Someone I should have let go. "Maybe," I said, my voice trembling. "But you didn't." He set the glass down hard, the sound sharp in the quiet. "You think love makes a man better? It doesn't. It just gives him something else to lose." "Then lose me," I said. "If that's what you want." He stared at me for a long time, his jaw tightening, his eyes unreadable. Then slowly he shook his head. "I can't." I stepped forward until there was barely a breath between us. "Then stop pretending you want to." The air between us burned. Dante's hand lifted, hesitated, then touched my face, rough fingers against soft skin. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice low, trembling. "Neither should you," I whispered. Then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was years of pain and guilt and need breaking loose all at once. The kind of kiss that made the world outside disappear. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. "If I keep you," he whispered, "this world will devour you." "Maybe," I breathed, "but at least I'll know it was real." The look in his eyes, raw, broken, and human, said everything his words couldn't. Hours later, the house was quiet. The rain had stopped, and dawn crept through the windows, painting the marble floors in soft gold. I woke to find Dante sitting on the balcony, shirt half-buttoned, the weight of the night still hanging over him. I joined him silently. "Matteo took care of everything," he said, his voice distant. No trail. No body. Luca's gone? He nodded once. For good. I looked out at the horizon. What happens now? He was quiet for a long time. Then, now I have to decide what kind of man I'm going to be without him. And me? He turned to me, the morning light catching the sadness in his eyes. You deserve a world that isn't built on blood. I don't want perfect, I said. I just want real. For the first time, he smiled. Small, fragile, and true. You always did ask for the impossible. Maybe that's why I found you. He reached over, taking my hand. His palm was rough and warm, trembling just slightly. Stay, he said finally. And though every warning in my head screamed no, my heart whispered yes. Because in that broken morning light, surrounded by the ghosts of everything we'd both lost, I realized something. The war might have ended, but we were still here. Still breathing. Still choosing each other, one impossible day at a time. I thought that killing Luca would end everything. The danger, the fear, the endless chase through shadows. But in Dante's world, peace was never anything more than a pause before the next storm. It began 3 nights later. The mansion was quiet, too quiet. Matteo had doubled the guards, but even from the window of the guest room, I could feel it. Something wrong, heavy in the air. When I found Dante in his father's old office, he was sitting behind the massive oak desk, papers spread before him, a half-empty glass of whiskey beside a gun. The light caught his face, carving sharp lines across it. He hadn't shaved in days. You're not sleeping, I said softly. He didn't look up. Sleep isn't a luxury I can afford right now. I took a step closer. You're bleeding. His fingers brushed the small cut on his hand, still fresh. Initiation scar. For what? His eyes lifted to mine, dark and tired. A blood oath. The words chilled me. You're serious. It's tradition, he said. After a family head dies, the remaining men swear allegiance to the one who replaces him. It keeps the loyalty intact. And if they refuse... He took a slow sip of whiskey. Then I make sure they never get the chance to betray me. I stared at him. You mean... Yes. The room went silent. Dante, I whispered, you can't keep doing this. Every time you draw another line in blood, you lose more of yourself. He smiled faintly, but there was no humor in it. What's left to lose? I wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him see that there was still something human left. But his walls were back up, higher than ever. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with steady hands. Stay here tonight. No matter what you hear, don't come out. Where are you going? To remind them who I am. The great hall was filled with men when I followed him, even though I wasn't supposed to. Candles flickered along the marble floor, their light throwing long shadows across a circle of faces. Old, scarred, loyal, dangerous. Dante stood at the center, sleeves rolled, a knife glinting in his hand. Matteo's voice carried through the air. You all know why we're here. The Vale bloodline doesn't die tonight. It's reborn. Each man stepped forward in turn, slicing his palm and pressing it to Dante's. Blood mixed with blood, the oath, ancient and brutal. But one man hesitated, a tall soldier named Ricci. I swore to Luca, Ricci said quietly, and I don't break my word. The room tensed. Dante's voice dropped to a whisper. Then you die with him. The flash of movement was almost invisible. A twist of Dante's wrist, a sound like air splitting, and Ricci fell before I could blink. I gasped. The men stayed silent, unmoving, their loyalty sealed by fear. When it was done, Dante wiped the blade clean, his expression unreadable, and then his eyes lifted, straight to me. For a moment, the world stopped. He didn't speak, didn't move. But that single look, the cold, broken emptiness behind his gaze, said everything. He had seen me, and I had seen too much. Later, I found him in the courtyard. The rain had started again, soft and relentless. He stood by the fountain, staring at the blood still drying on his hands. "Why did you follow me?" he asked, voice low. "Because I had to see," I said. "Because I needed to know what's happening to you." He laughed bitterly. "And what do you see now?" "I see a man trying to hold a world together that was meant to fall apart." He turned, eyes sharp. "You don't understand. If I don't control them, they'll destroy everything, and everyone connected to me, including you." "You think killing loyalty into them will make you safe?" I asked. "You're becoming the thing you swore you'd never be." He stepped closer, his voice rough. "I never had a choice." "Yes, you did," I said. "You always did." For a heartbeat, something flickered in his eyes. Pain, doubt, maybe even regret. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "Go inside, Elena," he said. "No." He stared at me, jaw tight, muscles tense. "You're not helping." "Neither are you." We stood in the rain, silence stretching between us like a wound. Finally, he exhaled. "If you're staying in my world, you follow my rules." "And if I don't?" He met my eyes. "Then I'll have to make you." The words weren't a threat. They were a confession. I took a step forward, the rain sliding down my face. "Try me." For a moment, we just stood there. Him, all power and control, and me, the girl who'd stumbled into the fire and refused to burn quietly. Then his hand shot out, gripping my wrist, pulling me closer until I could feel his heartbeat pounding against mine. "You drive me insane," he said through clenched teeth. "Good," I whispered. "Maybe you'll finally feel something real." And then he kissed me. Not soft, not careful. It was desperate, angry, full of everything we both couldn't say. The rain poured harder, soaking us both, thunder rolling overhead. When he broke the kiss, his voice was ragged. "You should hate me." "Maybe I do," I said. "But it doesn't change the fact that I love you anyway." The look in his eyes broke me, that split second of pure vulnerability before the armor returned. "Then God help us both," he whispered. That night, I couldn't sleep. The mansion was too quiet again, the kind of quiet that hides danger. I slipped out of bed, wrapping a robe around myself, and followed the faint light down the hall. Voices drifted from the study. Matteo's. "She's changing him, Dante. The men see it. They're starting to question if you've gone soft." Dante's voice, low and sharp. "If they mistake mercy for weakness, I'll remind them what I am." "And what are you exactly?" Matteo asked quietly. There was silence. Then Dante's answer. "A man trying to protect something pure in a world that doesn't deserve it." I pressed my hand to the wall, my heart breaking a little more with every word. Because that was the tragedy of Dante Vale. He could never see that he was the thing worth saving. When I returned to my room, lightning flashed outside, lighting up the rain-streaked windows. I caught a reflection, movement at the edge of the glass. A shadow. Someone was out there. Before I could react, the window shattered inward. A figure in black burst through, and everything went white with sound. Glass, wind, a flash of steel. I screamed, ducking as a blade slashed through the air where my neck had been. "Dante!" I yelled. The door flew open. Shots rang out. The attacker fell, faceless, silent, dead before he hit the ground. Dante was there in seconds, gun still raised, eyes wild. He dropped to his knees beside me, grabbing my face with shaking hands. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, too stunned to speak. He looked at the body, then at me. "This wasn't random." "Who was he?" Dante stood slowly, his voice flat. Someone testing the new king. The scent of gunpowder clung to the air long after the intruder's body was dragged away. I couldn't get the sound of the gunshots out of my head, the thunder of it echoing through the marble halls like a promise of war. Dante hadn't said a word since. He stood by the shattered window, staring into the darkness beyond. His knuckles were white around the gun in his hand. "Who sent him?" I whispered. He didn't look at me. "Someone inside." The words hit like ice. "Inside?" He finally turned, his expression carved from stone. "No one gets past those gates without help." Matteo entered the room then, his face grim. "We've already checked the outer guards. No signs of forced entry. The cameras were cut 10 minutes before the attack." "By who?" Dante demanded. Matteo hesitated. "We don't know yet, but whoever it was, they knew the system." Dante's jaw tightened. "Then find them. Now." Matteo nodded and left. When the door closed, Dante exhaled slowly, lowering the gun. For the first time in hours, I saw it, the exhaustion behind his fury. "You're bleeding," I said quietly, reaching for his arm. A thin cut trailed down his forearm, still fresh from the fight. He didn't flinch when I touched it. His voice was rough. "I should have known it would come to this, the moment I took control. This isn't your fault." He gave a bitter laugh. "Everything that happens in my house is my fault." I shook my head. "You can't keep carrying every wound, Dante. It'll kill you." He looked at me then, eyes dark and unreadable. "Maybe that's what it takes to survive here." "No," I whispered. "It's what destroys you." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The rain outside had stopped, replaced by the low hum of thunder far in the distance. Then Matteo's voice echoed from the hall. "Boss, we found something." Dante strode past me, motioning for me to stay back, but I followed anyway. In the security room, the monitors showed looping footage, the same 15 seconds, repeating over and over. Matteo pointed. Someone tampered with the feed. Right before the attack, this section froze. "Rewind it," Dante ordered. Matteo did. The image flickered, blurred. Then briefly, a shadowed figure appeared at the back gate. It was too quick to make out the face, but Dante's eyes narrowed. Pause. He leaned closer, scanning the screen, and then his entire body went still. I followed his gaze. The figure turned slightly, just enough for the light to catch a familiar tattoo on his neck. Matteo swore under his breath. "That's Nico." My stomach dropped. Nico, the quiet one. Dante's most trusted soldier. The man who'd once saved his life in a warehouse shootout years ago. Dante's voice was low, almost a growl. "Where is he now?" "We can't find him," Matteo said. "He's vanished." An hour later, the mansion was in lockdown. Guards patrolled every hallway, every door reinforced. The air buzzed with tension, the kind that could ignite with a single spark. I found Dante in the armory, loading his gun in silence. "You're going after him," I said. He didn't answer. "Dante, listen to me. You don't even know what happened. What if Nico was forced? What if someone—" His gaze snapped to me, sharp as a blade. "He betrayed me, Elena. I don't need to know why." I stepped closer. "He's your friend." "Was." "Dante—" He slammed the gun on the table, the sound echoing through the room. "You think I want this?" His voice cracked, anger, grief, all of it bleeding through. "Every man I kill, every life I ruin, I carry them with me. But loyalty is the only thing keeping us alive. And when that breaks, everything else falls." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Then he turned, holstering his weapon. "Stay here." I grabbed his hand before he could leave. "I'm not letting you face this alone." He stared at me, eyes dark and searching. "You don't belong in this part of my world. Too late, I said. Something shifted in his expression. Pride, pain, maybe both. You're going to be the death of me. Then at least you'll die knowing you weren't alone. We found Nico at the docks. The night was thick with fog, the air tasting of salt and betrayal. Floodlights from the ships cut through the mist, turning everything ghostly and pale. Dante moved like a shadow, silent and certain. Matteo and 2 men followed close behind. I stayed hidden behind a shipping container, my heart pounding. Nico stood at the end of the pier, a duffel bag at his feet, his gun already drawn. I knew you'd come, he said. Dante stepped into the open, rain glinting off his coat. You should have kept running. Nico laughed softly. And missed the chance to say goodbye? You betrayed me. I survived you, Nico shot back. There's a difference. Dante's voice dropped to a low, dangerous whisper. You helped them get into my house. You tried to have her killed. I didn't touch the girl, Nico said quickly. That wasn't me. I swear it. Then who? Nico hesitated, his gaze flicking toward the water. You're not ready for that truth, boss. Try me. Nico's hand trembled slightly, the gun shaking just enough for me to see the fear under his defiance. It wasn't a rival family, he said finally. It was someone inside your own bloodline. Dante's breath stilled. What did you say? Nico looked up. Your father wasn't just killed by Luca. He wanted to die. He made a deal, a trade. You for the Empire. That's a lie. Is it? Nico took a step closer. Ask yourself why Luca spared you. Ask yourself why every hitman in this city had orders to kill everyone except Dante Vale. For the first time, Dante faltered. The gun lowered slightly. Why are you telling me this now? He demanded. Because they'll come again, Nico said. And next time, they won't miss. A shot rang out. Nico froze, eyes wide, then crumpled to the ground. Behind him stood Matteo, his smoking gun still raised. Boss, Matteo said coldly. He was stalling. You couldn't trust him. Dante didn't speak. He just stared at the body, his face unreadable. I stepped out from hiding, unable to stop myself. He was trying to help us. Matteo turned, eyes narrowing. You shouldn't be here. But Dante was staring at Matteo now, really staring. Why did you shoot before I gave the order? He asked quietly. Matteo hesitated. He reached for his gun. No, Dante said softly. He didn't. The silence stretched. And then it hit me. The cameras cut. The timing of the attack. The access codes only a handful of men knew. Matteo, I whispered. It was you. His hand twitched, just slightly, toward his jacket. Dante moved first. Gunfire exploded in the fog. I screamed, ducking as the shots echoed across the pier. When the smoke cleared, Matteo was on his knees, clutching his side, blood spilling through his fingers. Dante stood over him, gun steady, his face carved with fury and heartbreak. Why? Dante asked, voice breaking. Matteo coughed, a bitter smile curling his lips. Because I got tired of waiting for you to burn it all down yourself. Dante's hand shook just once, and then he pulled the trigger. The shot was final. The sound of the body hitting the dock was louder than the thunder above. I ran to him, grabbing his arm, my voice shaking. You didn't have to. Yes, he said, voice hollow. I did. He turned to face me, rain mixing with blood on his face. It ends now. All of it. What are you talking about? I'm stepping down, he said, walking away before there's nothing left of me. I stared at him, heart racing. You think they'll let you? They won't have a choice. He holstered his gun, eyes meeting mine. I've spilled enough blood for 1,000 lifetimes. I won't spill yours. And then he did something I never thought I'd see. He fell to his knees, the weight of it all finally breaking him. I knelt beside him, wrapping my arms around his shaking shoulders. "You're not alone," I whispered. "Not anymore." His voice cracked. "Then stay with me. Please." "I already am." The sun never rose that morning. Or maybe it did, hidden behind the smoke that still lingered over the docks, staining the sky gray and heavy. Dante's mansion felt hollow when we returned. Every shadow seemed longer, every silence deeper. Matteo's betrayal hung over everything like a ghost. He didn't speak for hours, just sat in his study with the curtains drawn, staring at the empty fireplace. His hands were clasped, the same hands that once built an empire and had now torn it apart. I watched from the doorway, unsure if stepping closer would break him or save him. Finally, he spoke. Barely a whisper. "I thought I could build something different. I thought I could protect what my father destroyed." "You did," I said softly. "You protected me." His gaze lifted, dark, hollow, tired. "And in doing that, I damned us both." "Don't say that." He stood, pacing. Matteo was right about one thing. This life, it consumes everything it touches. You can't love in it. You can't even breathe without blood on your hands. I stepped closer. "Then walk away. We can go anywhere. Start over." "Do you really think they'll let me go?" he asked sharply. "Luca's men, the families, they'll see it as weakness. They'll come for me, for you." "Then let them come," I said, surprising even myself. "You've faced worse." He stopped, staring at me like he didn't recognize me for a moment. Then slowly, he smiled. That sad, dangerous smile I'd come to know. "You've changed," he said. "You did that," I whispered. He reached out then, his hand brushing my cheek. "If I could take you back to the day we met, I'd tell you to run." "And I wouldn't," I said, catching his hand in mine. Our foreheads touched, the air between us trembling with everything unspoken. Then, from outside, a sound shattered the fragile peace. Tires screeching on gravel, shouts, gunmetal clanging. Dante's head snapped up. "They're here." He moved instantly, years of instinct taking over. He grabbed the pistol from the desk and handed me another. "Stay behind me." The sound of engines grew louder, black SUVs tearing through the gates. The air thickened with the thud of boots, the click of weapons being loaded. He took a breath, steady, calm. "If anything happens..." "Don't," I said. "Don't finish that sentence." He looked at me, something breaking behind his eyes. Then he kissed me, hard, desperate, final. "I love you," he whispered against my lips. "That's the only truth I have left." Then the doors exploded inward. Gunfire filled the halls like thunder. I ducked behind the marble pillar as Dante returned fire, precise, merciless. The smell of smoke and burning wood filled the air. Bullets shattered glass, tore through paintings, sent dust raining down from the ceiling. One by one, the intruders fell, but there were too many. Dante moved like he was born for this, silent, efficient, unstoppable. But even kings bleed. A bullet grazed his shoulder. He stumbled but didn't stop. Another tore through his side, staining his shirt crimson. "Dante!" I screamed, crawling toward him. He turned, eyes fierce. "Stay down." "Not without you." I aimed, fired at the man behind him. The shot hit true. The body crumpled instantly. My hands were shaking, but I didn't care. Dante looked at me then, not with anger, but pride. "You shouldn't have learned this," he said. "I learned it because of you." The last gunman fled, disappearing into the courtyard. For a moment, silence fell again, broken only by the sound of our ragged breathing. I ran to Dante, pressing my hand to his side. You're bleeding too much. He gripped my wrist, shaking his head. It's nothing. It's not nothing. He tried to stand but faltered. I caught him, lowering him to the floor. You have to let me help. I can't. Not here, he muttered. They'll regroup. I could hear it too. More engines, more voices. They were coming back. Then we run, I said. He looked at me, blood on his lips, pain in his eyes. Where? Anywhere, as long as it's away from this. He hesitated, then nodded once. There's a tunnel beneath the study, old escape route. My father had it built during the wars. Together we stumbled through the wreckage. Smoke curled around us, the air thick with ash and memory. The mansion, his kingdom, burned behind us. In the study, Dante pressed a hidden latch behind the bookshelf. The floor shifted open, revealing a stairwell descending into darkness. We descended, his arm over my shoulder, my heart pounding with every echoing step. At the end of the tunnel, a metal door led to the woods beyond the estate. I pushed it open. The night air rushed in, cold and clean. We stepped out beneath the stars. For the first time in forever, Dante looked small. Not the boss, not the king, just a man. He turned to me, eyes glinting in the moonlight. If I walk away now, everything I've built dies. Maybe that's the point, I said. So something new can live. He stared at me for a long moment, then laughed. Quiet. Broken. You always did see what I couldn't. We reached the car hidden beneath the trees. I helped him inside, his blood soaking into the seat. He leaned his head back, breathing shallowly. Stay with me, I whispered, my hands trembling as I pressed on his wound. He caught my wrist, his grip weak but certain. If I don't make it, you will. Listen. His voice was fading. There's a bank account. Offshore. Take it. Start over. Promise me you'll live. No, I said, tears blurring my vision. We both live, or we both don't. He smiled faintly. You stubborn angel. Then his eyes fluttered closed. Dante. I shook him, panic clawing through me. Don't you dare. His pulse was weak, but still there. I started the car, speeding down the dirt road as sirens wailed in the distance. The city lights blurred ahead, the same streets where it all began. Hours later, in a quiet, forgotten clinic on the edge of town, Dante Vale opened his eyes again. The doctor stepped back, whispering, He's stable, but he needs rest. I sat beside him, holding his hand. The color had started to return to his face. He looked at me, voice rough. Where are we? Somewhere safe, I said. No one knows we're here. He exhaled, eyes drifting shut again. Then maybe it's over. It's not over, I whispered. It's just beginning. Weeks passed. The world believed Dante Vale was dead. His mansion had burned to ash, his empire dismantled, his enemies scattered. But in a small cabin overlooking the sea, he was alive, scarred, quiet, and finally free. I stood on the porch one morning, coffee in hand, watching the waves crash against the rocks below. Behind me, I heard the soft creak of the floorboards. His footsteps. Still can't sleep? He asked, wrapping his arms around my waist. Too quiet, I said, smiling. I keep waiting for chaos. He kissed the side of my neck. Let it wait forever. We stood there for a long time, the sound of the ocean filling the silence between us. I keep thinking about what Nico said, I murmured. About your father, the deal. I know, he said quietly. And someday, I'll go back for the truth. I turned to face him. But not now? He smiled. Soft, tired, human. Not now. For the first time since the night I found that wallet, his eyes were unguarded. No power, no fear, just peace. Tell me, I whispered. If you could start again, what would you be? He thought for a moment, then said, "Yours." The sea roared, the wind carried the scent of salt and pine, and for the first time, I believed him. They said the Mafia boss vanished into legend, a man who walked away from power and left the city without a king. But in truth, he was still out there. Not as the Veil heir, not as the man with blood on his hands, but as someone who finally found what all his power could never buy. Peace. And me. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing a man like him can do is learn how to love.